Good afternoon, church. As you would already know or heard, I am Reverend Clive Thomas from St. Ambrose Church family. And you might be asking why I was asked to be here with you this afternoon and to speak particularly on this topic of servants to care for the environment, pointing to the fifth mark of mission. I am a member of the Anglican Alliance Caribbean Forum with responsibility for disaster management, and also I am a member of the Anglican Communion Environmental Network Steering Committee, the committee that sets the various policy guidelines for our response to creation care within the context of the Anglican Communion. So it is indeed a great pleasure for me to be here with you, to share these few moments with you, and to focus our minds and attentions particularly on creation care as Christians. Now, as we look at the secular world, we see a world that compartmentalizes almost everything: social, economic, political, physical, psychological, spiritual. We put various things in various categories and placed various levels of importance or emphasis on those different categories. The question to be asked is this: as Christians, can we truly compartmentalize our lives and put different things in different categories with different levels of emphasis and importance? No, we can't. For the only category that there is that of mission and ministry. We are called by God, as you would know and would have heard before, for two reasons. One, we are called by God to be with Him, to be in His presence, to belong to Him. And secondly, we were called by God to represent Him in His world and to do His work. That is the servant part. That is the mission and ministry, that of representing God in His world and doing God's work in God's world. Well, within the context of the church, we look at the mission given to the church by God as set out in the 5 marks of mission. The others you would have been going through before: to proclaim the good news, to teach and baptize, to respond to human need and suffering by loving service, to seek to transform unjust societies. And the one that we're going to be looking at now, to strive to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustain and renew the life of the earth. Creation care. Can creation care be seen as part of the mission of the church, carrying the same level of importance as to proclaim the good news, carrying the same level of importance as to teach and baptize, as to transform unjust structures, carrying the same importance as caring for those in need? We reflect on the words from Genesis chapter 1. verses 26 to 28, which speaks to us of part of the creation story. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our own image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing upon the earth." So God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and of the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." From the very beginning, we see God setting out for man part of the mission that man was to be carrying out in honor of God. But first, let's look at the words, "Let us make mankind in our image." One of the things that we always say is that we are created in the image and likeness of God. We reflect God's presence in God's world. Then let me ask, are we only that which is created, that is created in the image and likeness of God? What about the flora and fauna? Do they reflect the presence of God? What about the animals? What about creation in its totality? Does creation reflect the image of God? Is creation part of God? God created. And to bring creation into being, it means that God had creation planned in his divine image. And so we can see creation as the divine image of God coming in the physical form. It's like an artist taking paint and parchment or canvas and putting down a magnificent painting on that parchment or canvas. And we look at it and say, this artist painted this. There are specific characteristics in that painting that points to who that artist is. This artist paint in this particular way. The painting portrays part of who the artist is. Creation does the same for God. Creation paints part of the picture of who God is. When we look at the flora and the fauna and the animals, when we look at the mountains and the hills, when we look at the lakes and the rivers around the Caribbean, we see the beauty and magnificence of God. So yes, you and I, with particular intelligence, have been created in the image of God, but at the same time, creation also reflects the image of God. Question, therefore, if creation reflects the image of God, how should creation be treated? Understanding that creation reflects the goodness, the graciousness, the beauty, the power, the magnificence of God. If we understand that creation reflects the image and the likeness of God as we human beings do, it means that we will understand the importance of our care for creation. We will understand that we are not simply caring for plants and animals. We would understand that we are not preserving our natural resources simply so that we can have it to use. We will understand we are doing these things necessary to preserve creation, because when we look upon creation, we are looking upon the face of God. How many times we look out at various things that are there within Barbados and are amazed, and we say, God, how beautiful is your creation. How magnificent is your work. It therefore means that when we aid in the destruction of creation, when we do not carry out the mandate given to us by God, as recorded in the book of Genesis, when we are misusing and abusing our natural resources, it says that we are not responding to God's creation with love. We are saying that we are compartmentalizing our spiritual journey, and on that spiritual journey, on our response to God, creation care is not as important as anything else. So my economic situation is more important than creation care. My psychological state of mind is more important than creation care. But let me ask this question. We can be financially sound. We can be mentally and psychologically solid. But if the world is destroyed, where will we enjoy our economic stability? Where we'll be able to live with that psychologically sound mind that we have if the world around us is being destroyed by our actions? They all carry the same level of importance to God and should to us. Created reflecting the image and the likeness and the goodness of God. Yes, as I said, with the understanding that human beings have been created with greater intelligence. Secondly, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Mission given to man by God. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Now, over the years, within the context of various churches, they have put a very limited understanding to be fruitful and multiply. The limited understanding that they have placed on being fruitful and multiply is simply that of the procreation of children. It is much, much more than that. To be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it is an invitation by God to join with him in his continuing creative work. You see, God is not yet done with creation. God is continuing his creative process and has invited us as part of the mission given to us to join with him to be co-creators with him. How? Yes, the procreation of children, but by also ensuring that we create the necessary environment where our animals can multiply and survive generation after generation and do not go extinct. By ensuring that our vegetation continue to blossom and grow, and that we replant when we cut down, to ensure that there is a multiplication taking place within creation. For we can be fruitful and multiply in the limited sense of the procreation of children. But if we are not fruitful and multiplying in terms of our animal care, in terms of our plants, what world, what environment, with all of the children that we are bringing forth into the world, live in? So to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth is an invitation to be part and parcel with God in his continuing creative process. When we cut down, we replant. We harvest in such a manner to ensure that the species we are harvesting have enough time to multiply and replenish the source. All of that is part of the call of God to us, his servants, as part of the mission given to us as his children, to join with him as co-creators. So the question is this: when we are indiscriminately destroying agricultural lands, when we are indiscriminately cutting down the trees simply because we want a better view, and we are not replanting trees to replace those that have been cut down, what are we doing to creation? We are not multiplying, we are subtracting. And like each and every one of us know that when you have money in the bank, you don't even have to go in the bank for it to be subtracted from, because monthly the bank will be subtracting from it anyhow. But every time you look at the statement, it becomes less and less and less. And the less you have is the less you are able to live a comfortable life. If we do the same thing with the environment, it means that our environment will be becoming a less and less and less habitable place to live. And so, not only we ourselves, but our children, the animals and the plants, our flora and fauna, will find great difficulty in surviving. And the beauty of God's creation, that creation that reflects his power and his magnificence, will be reduced to that which brings human pain and suffering. Like so many territories that is so polluted that mankind who live there find themselves in pain and suffering. We are called by God to be part of his creative process in creation care. He also said to man, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over every cattle, over all wild animals in the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Have dominion. Now think about it. Created man in his own image and likeness, after he would have created a beautiful world that reflects his presence, and placed man there, and has given man the responsibility not only to maintain, but to increase, be fruitful and multiply, and fill, increase, multiply, ensure that creation does not diminish in its beauty, but that creation increase in its beauty. To ensure that our natural resources does not deplete, but to make sure that we do that which is necessary to preserve. Now he says to us, have dominion. Have dominion. You know, to tell a person to have dominion over something or someone can be a dangerous thing to do. Because sometimes we interpret to have dominion over means to do with you as I please, to do with you as I want. I will dominate you. I will have dominion over you. But is that what it really means? Is that what God meant when he said to man, have dominion? Dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds, over the cattle, over all the wild animals, over everything upon the earth? Is that what he actually really means? To dominate? To use as you please? Whether you desire to destroy or not? To have dominion can be interpreted as to rule over, have control over, authority over, management over. And in saying to man, have dominion over creation, God was saying to man, I give you the mission on my behalf to manage creation. I give you that authority over creation to manage creation on my behalf. My hands, my feet, my servants at work, managing creation on my behalf. And as such, a manager is required to give an account of his management of God's creation. A steward is expected to give an account of his or her stewardship of God's creation. And so, the question is to be asked, what type of managers are we of God's creation? What type of stewards are we? Because remember, this is not simply about water conservation. This is not simply about food security. This is not simply about moving away from fossil fuel and using renewable energy. This is about the care and preservation of God's creation. A creation that he made with his own hands before even you and I and human beings before us were formed. Man was not formed first according to the creation story. Creation was formed. The earth was formed in all its beauty and splendor. And then God made man and planted man into that creation and said to him, I create you in my own image and likeness. Be fruitful and multiply and have dominion. Keep my creation going. And that's what it's about. Responding to God through loving service. And that loving service is by caring for his creation. So yes, when we care for God's creation, there will be water conservation. When we care for God's creation, there will be food security. When we care for God's creation, there will be a reduction in the use of fossil fuel and a greater use of natural energy. But the driving force behind all of that is our response to God by caring for God's creation as a fulfillment of the mission given to us by him. And that is why it forms part of the 5 marks of mission. It is not simply because the church saw what was happening and decided that something tangible needed to be done simply to safeguard human life. But it is because the church saw and knew and understood that the care for creation is part of the mission given to the church by God. So it's not about the church, it's not about you and I responding to government. It's not about you and I responding to some social program. But you and I responding to the call of God as his servants to care for his creation as managers, as stewards. And it therefore means that you and I will know how to use, when to use, when to replenish, when to change. Because the intention will be that of caring for creation. I will not address you for the whole period that you're here, but give you the opportunity, if you so desire, to ask me a few questions. And so, do you have any questions for me at this time? I'm in an Anglican church, I should remember that. We seldom answer questions or ask questions. Then let me ask. Let me ask the question then. Do you see God in creation? Do you see God in his creation? Do you? Yes, you do. Then if you see God in his creation, then how should creation be treated? You don't have to answer that question for me. Answer it for yourself. If you see God in creation, how should creation be treated? If you see yourself as being given the mandate to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and fill the earth, if you see yourself as being invited by God to be co-creators, are you helping to multiply? Or are you helping to reduce, to destroy? Do you see yourself as a manager of God's creation, as a steward, have dominion over? And if you see yourself as a steward, as a manager over God's creation, then ask yourself the question, how am I managing God's creation, even within the context of my own little home? Am I cutting down all the trees and simply putting concrete? Because I can't deal with the grass. I can't deal with the plants. Everything around me has to be concrete. How am I managing God's creation when it relates to the animals and others around me? Thank you so very much for your time. Thank you for having me with you for this short period. And of course, you will be exposed to a much deeper dealing of this as we have the Deanery Lenten study. I think that is going to be on Monday in Holy Week. I should be dealing much deeper with the fifth mark of mission. So those of you who are able would join in on Zoom for that study. And of course, as I said, it's going to be much longer and deeper than what is done today. So thank you so very much, Ken and Isaac, for having me here at St. Cyprian's. Thank you so very much for listening. And please, I do hope that I would have convinced you that creation care is not simply about a social program or response to some governmental call, but creation care is our response to God, because it's part of the mission given by God to us. Thank you.